Hi, everyone. Thank you all for coming. I'm so excited to share this space with you today. It's really been a little bit of a tough week for me, and just being able to be around other neurodivergent people or people that are interested in learning about neurodivergency is so invigorating for me. So, as you are here, we do have a bunch of tips for you. So, make sure to turn off those notifications, start to close down any windows that you don't need because we're going to be talking about neurodivergent networking today, which is super important because we have a lot of considerations that we need to make for our emotional well-being. So thrilled to have you here. Let's talk about why we're here, what we're doing here. So Asana, I'm an Asana ambassador. I This is a community-led program that is hosted by Asana. So if you don't know, Asana is a very lovely project management tool. I am an Asana ambassador, which means that I just promote Asana usage. It's a project management tool that is very delightful, and I found that it has a lot of features and tips in it that really work for me and my brain and how it works. And becoming an Asana ambassador is super easy, and you can join with any level of familiarity. You have to just do a couple of quizzes, a couple of certifications, and then you can become part of it. If you're looking for any more resources, I'm going to drop a link into the chat right now about that program, and you can learn a little bit more about it. Really fantastic for project management. So for today, we're going to go over our agenda. We're going to have a little bit of a community agreement, which is going to be more about how we're being accepting of everyone in their space that they are. I'm going to introduce Paige, who's amazing. I'm so excited for all of you to meet her. We're going to go through some specific networking tips and tricks so that you can have a few scripts to refer back to for in-person and for virtual networking. We're going to go through a little bit of a networking activity where you're able to actually take a couple minutes and write through your elevator pitch. After that, we'll take any of those questions that are in the chat, and please remind me and drop them in the chat again. If I miss them, I'll try to answer them as we go through. And then we'll talk about a little bit about the takeaways and where you can find us afterwards. So as far as our community agreement today, I do want to pull this quote from the Stanford Neurodiversity Project. Neurodiversity is a concept that regards individuals with differences in brain function and behavioral traits as part of normal variation in the human population. As we move through today's conversation, just remember that neurodivergence looks different for everyone. Not everyone believes in being diagnosed. Not everyone believes that there are disabilities or disorders. Your experience may not align with someone else's, and that's totally okay. This is a space for open minds, respectful learning, and shared growth. So if you are feeling open to learning today, drop in the chat that you're excited or share an emoji. Let us know, give us some love. I'm going to introduce myself. I am Zan Griffin. I have been late diagnosed in life. I was diagnosed in September of this year. And when that happened to me, when I sought an ADHD diagnosis, a lot of things made sense. And a lot of things that didn't make sense before, I didn't feel comfortable in the working environment. And I really didn't understand why. And I finally thought out that diagnosis, and that was for me a personal acceptance. And I decided, instead of being silent about it, that I wanted to be vocal in my career and to be able to share this and have a voice and also bring other neurodivergent voices to the forefront and talk about the successful professional topics that they've been in. So as far as our guest speaker, welcome, Paige. Paige is a neurodiversity self-advocate and group facilitator. She works with Neurotalent Works, and they have a mission to create neurodiverse workplaces and facilitating community events. And I thought there was no other better person to help us with our neurodivergent networking than Paige. She also co-organizes the Ventura County Neurodivergent Adult Meetup group. Paige is also earning a master's in psychology at Antioch University, Santa Barbara. Paige, do you want to say hi?
Yeah, thank you, Zan. Hi, everyone. It's nice to meet you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Paige, for being here. This is a stat that I usually bring up in our neurodivergent networking and neurodivergent events. It's a stat that is talked about a lot. You can see it in TEDx conferences, you can see it in other blog posts about neurodivergence. But when I was digging into this stat is a composite figure, and it's actually only composed of autism, dyslexia, and ADHD in children. And it's not one universal research study, and there's really not a lot of research studies around how many people are neurodivergent in our space today. So I do want you to keep aware of that because this is probably much higher. And this is 1 in every 5 people, and it's likely much higher. So there's this huge stigma around neurodivergent folks that we can't do the same work or that we have superpowers, and it might create some unrealistic expectations. And this is actually a lot of people. And one of the things that I've seen a lot is that I can feel very alone sometimes in the professional world with the way that I do things. And this is just a reminder, hey, you're not alone. You're not the only person out there. And we have the power to be able to change the narrative. Now, going into the more networking side of things, surprise, you are actually already networking. If you want to drop into the chat your LinkedIn URL, I'll give you a few seconds to do that while I'm talking about this quote that's on the screen. 70% of people were hired at a company where they had a connection from LinkedIn Global Survey. This is very real in today's environment, especially with the job search being there's tons of people looking right now. There's tons of it's really great candidates out there. The thing that can actually put you over the that threshold of actually securing a position or getting nonprofit resources, depending on what your goal is and with networking, it can be the people that the one thing I did want to highlight for you is that when you are networking, the thing you should keep in mind is do you actually enjoy talking to this person? Do you actually want to be a part of them and have them be a part of your life? And that's awesome. Everyone in the chat, go through LinkedIn. We'll actually send all these out afterwards as well. So drop your LinkedIn in and we'll send them out. And so you can have that as a follow-up email as well. So don't feel like you have to connect with everyone right now. We'll send it over. So like, why are we even doing this today? Networking sucks. It's loud, it's crowded, it's way too overstimulating. The thing that you need to remember is you can make networking suck less through things that you can control. One of those things are where are you actually going and networking? When I started to go networking, I would go and be completely exhausted afterwards and not even want to follow up with some of the people that I had contacts with. And I didn't feel like I was having the right kind of conversations even. The reason behind that was I was going to the wrong places. I was going to spaces where I didn't necessarily feel safe as a professional to show up and be my authentic self. And one of the things that you can do is figure out the right places to be at. When I started going to both queer and neurodivergent networking spaces, instead of just the overarching, oh, this is networking for small business, this is networking for X. Once I started getting into those more niche spaces, I was able to become my true self in my conversation. So just remember that as we're going through, you need to find the right places, dig into where you feel most comfortable. So this is just a fun little meme that I put here to illustrate. We all feel like this. I always say something awkward and I'm just like, okay, I'm done. I failed at this. Let's go. And the way that I figured out how to handle this was by being more prescriptive about the types of ways that I approach networking. And one of those is going to be, how do we combat this challenge of overstimulation in the room? There is bright lights, it's loud, it's crowded, it's chaotic. How do we control how we feel about this and how we can manage our energy in that space? So the first thing I would say is to scout the venue, go early, or even if it's a space that you can actually access beforehand. So if it's at a bar, maybe you can actually go a few nights before to see what the actual physical space looks like. Go on that space's website, see if there's any places where you might be able to go and sit and recharge. If there's a hallway, a corner, an outdoor space, I find it really helpful for me to have a reward for, okay, I had a conversation with someone. I can now take a break and go sit in that outdoor space. They have a little, maybe they have a garden space or something like that, where I could say, okay, now I can go and take a break. As far as taking the break, plan those short breaks so that you can engage in something calming. I always have fidget toys on me in my purse, in my laptop carrier, because it gives me an opportunity to reset my brain. And it's like a lightning rod of, okay, now I can start to focus again. When you grab fidget toys, if you have something very small, you can even try to fidget with it while you're doing your networking, as long as you are communicating, hey, this is a tool that I use when I'm talking just to keep me focused on what we're talking about. So, time limits. This is important for me because what I do is say, I'm going to miss an opportunity. I'm going to miss the person who's going to give me the next step of my career or connect me with the right type of person if I don't stay the entire time at the event. And you need to be able to understand yourself and understand how long you can physically, emotionally, and mentally be at an event. And how to honor that boundary is by saying, you know what, if I stay here for half an hour, I make 2 great connections. That's completely better than making 17 connections and then never following up with them because you're too exhausted to even think about existing with them. And I want Paige to share a little bit because she hosts this really amazing networking group virtually. I would love for you to share a little bit about the virtual events and how to approach virtual events and overstimulation.
Yeah, thank you. So these tips are really important. I find these tips to be helpful in any kind of events, whether it's work or networking related or social gatherings or celebrations. Like taking breaks, having reasonable expectations is really important. And it can definitely be applied to virtual events as well. I think sometimes there can be anxiety over expectations of, oh, if I RSVP or register for this Zoom event, then I have to go and I have to stay the whole time. And let me just tell you from an organizer perspective, from organizing neurodivergent networking events, I totally understand if people only come for part of it. And it's pretty frequent that maybe halfway through people say in the chat or they'll unmute and say, hey, I gotta go. Thanks for hosting this. And no problem. I'm really glad that people show up and get anything out of it. And sometimes it's a scheduling thing, sometimes it's self-regulation. I can handle this much networking time. And I think that's a really wise strategy for kind of avoiding that overstimulation and staying self-regulated. And the fidget toys are a great idea. And the nice thing about virtual events is you can be fidgeting under your computer. Like I took out this new slime I got today and it smells good and it has stuff in it. And it's honestly right now, it's not that I'm stressed, I'm, like, excited, and sometimes it can help self-regulate excitement as well.
Yeah, that is such an important part is remembering to check in with yourself and say, okay, how am I feeling right now? I don't have to push past my boundaries. I can actually respect those and set those time limits. So Thank you so much for that, Paige. So let's go into our second tip, which is difficulty talking to people. I had a neurodivergent ADHD report that I was managing, and we had these retreats at work, and I always found that she was on the sidelines, and I eventually ended up talking to her, and I said, "Hey, I would love for you to become like more integrated into the actual company because you would get so much more exposure to the different sides of the company and then be able to have a better career progression because of that. Because unfortunately, in this day and age, it's who you know." One thing that she mentioned to me was that she just feels overwhelmed and doesn't even know where to start. And so one of the things that I worked with her on was to say, okay, let's script some things that you can say and intros that you can practice so that you can go in and start to have little things that you can like just reference and go back to. Starting a conversation is super intimidating, especially in a room full of strangers. There's a lot of anxiety around, do I say the right thing? Do I say the wrong thing? Am I going to get rejected by this person? Is the person just going to turn me away completely? What if I don't like this person and I need to get away from them in a conversation? So, one of the things that you can do if you are nervous about networking, admit it. That's my first tip, because when you admit it, you expose a slightly vulnerable side of yourself that allows other people to not only feel comfortable to share a more vulnerable part of themselves, but it just makes you more human and it allows them to engage with you. If you're nervous, just admit it. I always get a little nervous about at these things. Do you get nervous at these things? Oh, you don't get nervous? Oh, tell me, like, how do you not get nervous? What are the parts of things that you do to not get nervous at these things? It's just a conversation starter there. And then other openers you can use if you're not nervous or if you just don't know what to say. These are actual interesting questions that you can ask them. So, like neutral, open ended questions. What's the one thing you want to be known for? Everyone loves talking about themselves. And if you ask someone what they want to be known for, it digs into their dreams and desires. So, they are more likely to open up and share with you. If you ask someone, what do you do? They're going to be like, I'm an analyst and I work with data all day. It's interesting and you need to know it at some point. But if you ask them, what's the one thing you want to be known for? And they respond with, I want to be known for this data science project that I've been putting together on the environment and how we can better serve people in the environment. Then you have something to clip onto and remember about them. What do you spend most of your time doing is also a good alternate for the space of what do you do? What do you spend most of your time doing doesn't actually limit them to work, which creates a more interesting question as well. Sometimes, what do you spend most of your time doing? Oh, you know what? I do a bunch of escape rooms actually. Let me tell you about those. And then you can talk more about their life instead of just them. This one, is there anyone here that you think I should know? Is also an interesting opener. You can use that in more of a after you've been asking more questions and going through your elevator pitch, which we'll talk a little bit more in the future. And I wanted to share a little bit about this closing one. Are you ready to leave? Have you had this conversation? You're not really enjoying your conversation with them. You don't really see a connection or anything like that. This is one of my biggest struggles is to how do I politely say, I would like to go talk to someone else in a really succinct way. These are a couple of things that I've used. I've had such a great time talking to you. Reiterate, hey, I've really enjoyed talking to you. I really want to meet a few more people. Let's exchange contact information if you want to. What about trying something like I enjoyed learning about you. Excuse me, I'm just gonna go get some water. Only use this one if you're actually gonna go get some water, get a drink, go to the bathroom, whatever your piece is that you actually need to go do. The third one is being more direct. Let's be direct. Everyone is really indirect in these days. If it's a person that you just don't want to talk to, I have to excuse myself. Great meeting you. If you didn't think it was great meeting them, just say, I have to excuse myself. I would like to meet a few more people at this event. So modify these based on what you are most comfortable with and practice them. Actually try, if it's a virtual event, try recording yourself saying these things and how you feel about it and review it afterwards and see how you feel about it. And then modify it. See how you're going with it. I wanted to talk a little bit about a more advanced tip on talking to people. This author here, Robbie Samuels, is an award-winning author. He has 3 books. He's recognized as a networking expert by NPR, Forbes, Amazon, Lifehacker, Harvard Business Review, Inc., etc. He's fantastic. We've all gone to events where we feel out of place or excluded. And Robbie Samuels is a transgender man who understands what it feels like to not fit in and belong. So he actually made this technique when he was observing the dynamics of different groups. He saw that different changes in body language can actually make people feel welcomed or even pushed aside. So his concept is croissants versus bagels. And we're going to go into, I'm going to show a little video. Hopefully the sound comes through. And if it doesn't, I will narrate what he's talking about. But it's essentially a very simple gesture when you're in a networking circle or that you can look for. Either you can do it to include people in, or you can look for it to see where you can start to talk to people if they're in this kind of bagel formation. Okay, it should be playing. Let me know if you hear the sound coming through. No. Okay, since there's no sound coming in for you, what he is saying right now is that this is the type of networking circle that you see at networking places. I'm going to pause it for a second so you can see this actual shift onto the back foot that this person just made. That is a physical opening that they're open to having someone join the circle. So as you go through, you'll see it happen again with this person on the right side as well. They'll shift back a little bit onto their back foot. You see right there that they are open to conversation. You can do that, or you can look for that. And then this person is actually shifting their weight. Robbie, the author, is shifting his weight so that he could showcase interest and openness and being able to do that. So sorry the sound didn't come through. We will work on that for next time. Does anyone have any questions? Because we want to make sure to address those as we're going through, because I know we're hitting a lot of things. I know if you're multitasking, I get it. There's a lot of tips in here. So let me know if you have any questions in the chat. Otherwise, we'll move forward into social fatigue. For social fatigue, one of the things that happens is that we can be very drained, especially if you are masking your neurodivergent traits to fit in that time. This can lead to exhaustion or lack of focus. And I am still guilty of masking, even though I'm more aware of it than ever. When I feel uncomfortable, I immediately go into, I need to say all of the right things at all of the right times. And I'm going to pause for a second because I did see 2 questions come in that I just want to address real quick. So, where do you find these networking events? There's tons of places to find more specific networking events than generalized networking events. Think about the things that you love and see if there's some sort of connection to them. For me, I am queer, so I look for queer networking events. I look for neurodivergent networking events. I also look for graphic design specific networking events because I have led graphic design visual teams for a long time. I know already that I love people in that space. And I also look for marketing specific ones because I love talking about marketing and being able to engage there. So I look for what do I really like? And then how do I bring that into my professional world? And also take a look at, okay, if you love the environment and you want to be able to be a part of that, you can network anywhere. If you're doing a volunteer tree planting, you can start talking to people there and seeing what they spend most of their time doing. And if there's maybe a connection there. And I do want to skip into Amanda's question, which is what is the intended outcome of talking to all these people? Great question. And one of the things I want you to remember is that we have limited time and resources. So maybe you don't want to talk to all these people. Maybe you want to be really ultra specific in your networking. And you can do that through, say, networking on LinkedIn. Actually, I reached out to a couple of our panelists from our last event through LinkedIn. I didn't know them before, but I saw that their content that they put out was about neurodivergency, and I really enjoyed the work that they were doing on LinkedIn. So I reached out on LinkedIn and I said, "Hey, I see we have a lot of things in common. Let's chat." So if it doesn't have to be all of these people, and it can be more specifically like a tailored group, and I do recommend that you keep it small. Let's talk. Yes, I see your follow-up question. What's the intended purpose of talking to any person? What's the goal of networking? It can be a couple of things. One of the most common is just to progress in your career, get a different opportunity or a different job. The other could be maybe you are looking for funding for a project that you're working for. Maybe you are looking for other people to create more content with. I know I network with the express desire to meet people to bring onto the stage and to talk with and content create. There's a ton of different ways, and I think that's the first thing you should think about, which is what's the goal of your networking when you're moving forward? Like, why are you going to these events? Do you want to do X, Y, or Z? Because if you don't have a goal, then you're going to start getting overwhelmed very quickly. So set your goal. For the most part, where I'm speaking about this from a perspective of a job seeker, but there can be lots of goals. All right, sorry for the tirade. Let's go into the social fatigue. So one of the things that you should look at is pacing yourself. Oh, and this is tied right into goals. Set realistic goals for the number you want, people you want to meet. 2 to 3 meaningful connections is going to be so much more powerful than 20 business cards of people that you hate and don't want to talk to ever again. Create some connections with people, talk to people that you're interested in, spend the time with people you're interested in. Planning those recharge activities, scheduling downtime before and after the event to recover energy. So for me, when I'm basing my day out and learning about my day, I try to think of it from a low, medium, and high energy effort. And Paige is going to talk a little bit more about spoon theory in a few seconds. And it's a good way to visualize how you're thinking about your energy and how you're dealing with yourself. And then lastly, here is the practicing self-compassion. You are not broken. You are perfect the way you are. You just need to be more aware of how your body is and how your mind is feeling at certain points. It's definitely okay to need more rest or to be able to have less conversations than other people can. It's okay, and you need to be able to convince yourself that it's okay. Paige, I'm going to go into our spoon theory graphic now.
Great. So, spoon theory, if anyone here is not familiar with it, is a concept used to conceptualize how our energy is throughout the day with certain activities for different people. And it's used a lot in the chronic illness community and in the neurodiverse community and in the disability community in general. So, it can be different for each person, but there's some basic things that might take fewer spoons, like getting up, it says 1 spoon, whereas gardening takes 5 spoons, and this is very relatable, and it can be helpful to try to maybe even budget for the day of, "Okay, I need to get this really hard thing done today." Like, I do my own yard work at my house, so I know that's pretty physically draining. Sometimes it can be a little hard, so if I know I'm going to do that, I might not also try to clean the whole house that day. I might do one or the other. And it is different for every person, can be different at time of day. Like I'm a morning person, so I usually have more spoons readily available earlier in the day. And it's just something you can experiment with for yourself.
Yeah, and for me, gardening would be like 1 spoon. It's not the same for everyone, whereas, like, sending an email is like 5 spoons. But for some reason, I can't send an email. So that's why I always make sure in my networking to have blocks of time that I know I need to follow up with people because I need to be able to take a walk before and after so that I can habit stack and say, okay, I got this email out, this LinkedIn connection report. Like, now let's treat myself. Let's have a different experience that's happening. So I do want to go into like remembering things. I have a horrible memory and I take lots and lots of notes because I know that I have a horrible memory that is not going to remember everything. Keeping track of names, roles, conversations can be really overwhelming, especially when you're like networking and meeting a couple of tons of new people. When you're doing that, take notes. Have a small notebook or even use your phone to jot down things. Some of the things that I like to do is I like to send myself an email or I type it into Keep. One of the things that I like to do is to send an email because it can forward it directly into my project management system for Asana. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a few seconds. We'll talk about how to use a project management tool to keep track of all of these people you're trying to reach out to. And then one of the things I try to do is repeat their name immediately in conversation. Not only does this help with remembering their name, but people also like their name being said. So, like, psychologically, it's more comforting and it makes it feel more familiar when you use their name multiple times in a conversation. So, another thing you can do is rhyme if you want to. You can make up a attribution. So, if Paige has a dog, it's a Chihuahua. So, I would be like, Paige, Chihuahua dog. I would actually write that in my notes so that I would remember and be able to also bring that up. I love being able to speak about your dog or your pet or your horse farm that you own. I don't know, whatever they have that's interesting to you, pair it to their name. So the next part is using technology. So looking for LinkedIn, like you can connect on LinkedIn through a simple QR code. You can take a photo of their business card. I like to personally use a forwarding tool to Asana to manage my networking uh, engagements. And I just wanted to just address a couple of things. There will be a recording sent after this, and we will also send up a follow up with all of the LinkedIn's that we have dropped into those chats. So make sure to drop that LinkedIn into your chat if you want to connect with a bunch of people. If not, that's totally cool. And I did see that there was another question that we'll take at the end. I wanted to show you the Asana board that I use. You can use Asana in several ways. One of the reasons I like to use them is because it's free for most of the features that I need. And also, you have different ways to visualize what you are working on. I have this in a list view right now, which gives me an overview of everyone that I'm like talking to or working with. There's also something called a board view where you can move things from column to column. So, say if you have a specific goal for interacting with people, maybe you want to ask them to be a referral for you in a job search, or maybe you need to help them with something. You could use something like a Kanban board style view. But for me, I like looking at it from a list perspective that's broken down into where I met them at. When I associate where I met them at with the type of person there, it's really helpful for me. The other things I have here are some templates. I just copy this template if I'm bringing it in, or I can use other tools to forward things in. When I do use Asana, it actually does put it into my tasks view. And this is how I manage my day, is looking at, okay, I need to do X, Y, Z, and it's scheduled for the day. It's in one task view. So my networking is every day and not necessarily just one-offs. I do put specific subtasks in so that I remember to follow up with people. And then this is just a quick reminder that you can use apps, you can use forwarding tools. So Asana has like an email that you can just shoot something off and it creates a task for you in your board. Or you can use things like If This and That or Zapier. Maybe you can connect your app to certain things to be able to get things into the same place. So I want to move into our networking activity. This is going to be a little bit, we're going to give you a couple of minutes to work on this, and then we're going to ask for people to talk about theirs, and then we can give you feedback if you'd like. So take a couple minutes to work through this. I'm going to show my own example as well so that you can see an example of it. Starting out with present, past, future, and then being able to ask a question. This is a template that you'll be able to use when you start to meet people either in person or virtually. You can even copy and paste this and send this in a LinkedIn message. I'm going to go to the next slide to show you what my elevator pitch looks like. And then we're going to give you a couple of minutes to work on it. And then I'm going to ask for volunteers. And if there's no volunteers, we'll go through and talk about the different types of feedback. So I'm going to read this one out loud. This is what I use. So, hi, my name is Zan Griffin. I'm a product marketer. I focus on B2B SaaS technology. I've increased revenue by 37%. I do a lot of active customer research. I really like to create transparent product roadmaps. I'm looking for my next role. I'm really focusing on companies that have really amazing culture and interesting problems to solve. Have you been to this event before? Ignore this. What do you do? We're going to replace that with, what do you spend most of your time doing? Or have you been to this event before? Something like that's a follow-up for them. So we'll give you a couple minutes to just wait with that. We'll do about 2 minutes or so and then see if we have any volunteers. And I'm going to go back to the slide before so you can see it without my information on it. And when you feel like you're done, feel free to drop in the chat. Hey, I feel good. I want to let me know if you were interested in volunteering. Or if you already have an elevator pitch that doesn't use this format, we'd love to hear that and talk about how you have had success or not as much success with it. I should have music going. Paige, do you sing? Do you want to sing for us?
I don't sing, but I have a French horn behind me, but I don't think anyone wants to hear that right now.
I actually saw your music stand and I was gonna ask you. Love that. Yeah, I'm not a singer either, but I do love karaoke. I will really Kill karaoke. Sarah, your best friend was a French horn player. I love that. Small world. Okay, so let's see. Does anyone have a start of a pitch? You don't have to finalize this. This is just like drafting, recording. You can try pitching on us. Okay, we'll give everyone a couple more minutes. I see that Kate's still working on it, and we'll give it one more minute. And one of the ways we're gonna provide feedback is through asking more questions and helping you to refine it down. So if it is just a draft, that is perfectly okay. All right. Is anyone open to sharing? Let us know in the chat. If you're not, if you're too shy, you don't have to come off mute. You can just drop it into the chat and we can read it out for you. Okay. Perfect. My ADHD brain is, I need to keep making noise. I can't sit in silence. All right. Is anyone ready to start or try to share part of their job?
I'll go, but I'm not going on camera because I'm very much in a robe.
Oh, it's totally fine, Sarah. Thank you for volunteering.
Yeah. So, hi, my name is Sarah Westland, and I manage the corporate social media team for Kingston Technology. Before, uh, I managed to improve brand sentiment at my previous job by implementing a customer first community management strategy that prioritized personalized communications with a transparency first mindset. Which is a really fancy elevator pitch way to say I talked to board game nerds in a way that they wanted to be talked to.
Awesome.
And then for future, because it is what I'm passionate about, I am looking for the opportunity to build brand recognition in communities that would benefit from a brand's product solution using a community management first strategy. I think so often we forget about the consumer and what they want and just really going for a grassroots movement
Mm.
is where I thrive.
Sarah, I am super glad that you mentioned that because I am also a really huge proponent of customer engagement and making sure that you're pulling that into every part of the business. So
Mhm.
I think that's a great first draft for being, firstly, like 2, 3 minutes. So great first draft. I think that could be really great for written as well. But as far as like talking it out loud, when you were speaking it out loud, did you feel like there was places that you stumbled a little bit on or that you would want to clarify more?
Always. I think also when I write something out versus speaking it, I'm comfortable doing both, but independently of each other. But if I'm taking something that's written and then reviewing it and then reading it, I will oftentimes want to improve it on the fly.
Yeah, make it more conversational. That makes a
Hmm.
lot of sense, Sarah. The part that you said that was like, that's a fancy elevator pitch way of saying XYZ. Is that actually like in your elevator pitch, or is that
No,
you explaining?
I
Well,
added that.
I want to say that was actually gold right there. I knew exactly what you were talking about when you just said that part. For the other parts, I had a little bit more question than clarity. But then you said, that's a fancy elevator way pitch of doing this. I was like, Sarah's relatable. I understand what she does now and I see what she's looking for. So I would say my biggest recommendation to you is to just strip it down. How do you make it like really straightforward for someone to know, especially if they're not in the industry or understand it? That would be my one recommendation. But I really great job for doing like 2 minutes. Paige, do you have any comments on it?
Yeah, that's great. I could tell from your statements that you have a lot of experience in your field and that you're really passionate about it. So that's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah. And the last thing I just wanted to mention is that whatever you kick off with, I want to just connect this by asking a clarifying question. So you said that I am a manager of a social team, but then
Mhm.
you said in the future, you're looking for more transitioning into voice of the customer. You didn't say this exactly, but this is what I translated to voice of the customer programs and things like that. Is that is that accurate of what you were looking to do or like move into?
Yes. With corporate social media, community management has always been a huge part of it. The kind of career progression I would love to see is more turning into a brand manager where taking all different components of marketing and kind of outward communication, also looping in care, customer service, and just really focusing on creating a better holistic image.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes sense. I would make sure so when you say I am that is what you want to be.
Okay.
Um, so if you are I am managing communities through XYZ, because when you said social media, I automatically was like, okay, she's in social media. Let me think of all the things that I can get her to. But when you were talking about like brand communities, brand management, that makes a little bit of a pivot. So for me specifically, mine is I am a product marketer who focuses on X. I actually was a director of marketing previously, but I want my next role, I want to be more of an individual contributor or a someone who manages a product marketing specific team. So that's where I always say I am a XY. This is what I want to do, or this is how I'm going to get there, if that makes
Gotcha.
sense.
Yeah, totally.
All right. So we are currently, does anyone else want to share? Because we have a couple more minutes. If not, we can go back into Q&A and I can go through those questions that we have in the chat.
I can share. I was going to go first, so
awesome.
I didn't have anybody to compare to. I don't think mine is as good as Sarah's, but I'm going to be brave and share it anyway. So for
Amazing.
my
I love
present,
that.
I have, hi, my name is Kate McCarty, and I'm a graphic designer. I focus on accessibility, branding, and social media design. Before, I have increased organizations' brand compliance by teaching teams about design basics and implementing easy-to-use templates. In the future, I'm looking for my next role with an organization that values accessibility and also has space for me to continue growing and learning as a designer.
I think it's fantastic. Yeah. And I wouldn't necessarily compare yourself to other people because Sarah's at a different point in her career than you are right now. And what I got from your statement was that you were interested in accessibility, easy to use templates, and you were a graphic designer. So those are the three highlights that I got from it. And the only thing I would tweak or recommendation I would make is continuing. The last part of it was continuing to learn at an organization. This is just one thing that I'm also a continuous learner. I'm constantly learning new things. But one of the things when you're talking with organizations or companies, they don't necessarily want to take the time to teach you new things. So it's how you spin your continuous learning. It needs to be more of I continuously learn because I want to learn instead of I continuously learn because I like need to learn on the job. It's like a very nuanced thing, and it just can get a little bit tricky to spin that in the right way. So that would be the only thing I would tweak.
So conveying that I will continue to learn whether or not you make time for that as a part of my schedule.
More, you don't have to be taught to do your job. So when you start to, because when you say, I want to learn at an organization, they immediately go, oof, we're going to have to teach this person. And Paige, let me know if you feel the same way about it. But this is some of the feedback I've gotten over my career as well, which is, how do you convey that you're an expert in what you do? Because that's what the company is looking for. You need to be an expert. And when you also pair that with like, I want to find a company that I can continue learning at, they sometimes look at that negatively, even though they shouldn't. Kate, I know exactly what you're saying, but this is just from a feedback that I've had. Paige, do you have any insight?
Yeah, I'm curious.
Oh yeah.
Oh, sorry. With something like graphic design, because I know that's something you're also in, like where it's like constantly changing technology, constantly changing platforms. It's an ever evolving industry where even if I was an expert on everything right now, if I didn't continue learning, I'd be rusty in a year. Like, how do you frame that?
The way I approach that is okay, how do I tell people that I will continually learn and stay up to date on trends and things like that? And I think one of the ways that you talk about that is, I stay up to date on trends by X or Y. When I get asked this question, like, how do you stay current in this environment? It's more about, I mention specific industry resources. I mention conferences that I go to. I showcase that I go and learn instead of that they have to teach me, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah.
And I wanted to leave some time for Paige to respond to.
I am learning from your feedback too, Zan. That is very interesting. And I'm going to see how I can apply that myself to communicate simultaneously being an expert in the skills we do have, and then also taking initiative to upskill and keep learning. That's very interesting.
Yeah, because it's definitely something I've struggled with as well, because I always want to stay a humble person that says, I'm always learning. I'm always going to be able to learn something new. But it's the way that we talk about it that can make us seem like we potentially don't know what we're doing or even need to be taught something. I think it's more like positioning it on, I take the initiative to do X, Y, Z instead of you need to do this for me. But yeah. Okay. Loved it. Fantastic elevator pitches. Practice them, record them on Zoom because it's going to be super helpful for you. We have time for a couple more questions. If anyone wants to drop in their questions, I'm looking through the chat right now to see if there's any that we didn't answer just yet. But feel free to come off mute if you'd like to. And the one question I wanted to hit was specifically, I just wanted to identify the difference between networking for purpose and networking for transactional, because this was something that was talked about in the chat. When you do network, you want to make sure that you're networking with the people you actually care about, because you're not always going to get something from them and them give something to you. It's going to be a kind of a give and take. Networking is a relationship building activity. You really need to be able to give them something to get something from them. And it's just like when you're having a friend, you're able to go and help them move out of their current apartment because you like them as a person and you want to be able to help them. You're not necessarily expecting them to say, pay for your dinner or something like that. You want to help people and meet people that are authentic, true to you, and that resonate with you. And that's why I always talk about going to the more specific networking places and really starting to have conversations that aren't just surface level, because you want to be able to create that connection. I want to go into where you can find us afterwards. I have a link tree that has Paige's next neurodivergent networking event on February 4th, something like that. Check the link tree. You can definitely find us there. And Paige has her meetup for Ventura County and also her LinkedIn here. Find us there. Thank you so much for joining, and we really appreciated all the time you spent with us and the bravery of the people that talked about their specific elevator pitches. That was amazing. I really enjoyed listening to those. So in the chat, I dropped in my notes, so please ignore the note part, but you can see a bunch of links. I hope that you're taking away something is that if there's any action items, if you want to reach out to us, feel free to. We'll send this recording afterwards. Drop in the chat if you want to. What are you taking away from this? What are you doing next? What's your next step in this big, wide world? Oh, thank you so much. Thanks so much for the session. Really useful in the chat. I'm really glad it helped. We do this just out of volunteering, honestly, and we want to be able to help empower the community. So it is so great to hear feedback. If there's anything you want to see next, we're planning out all of our next Neurodivergent Mastermind series. Next month, I have a Building Boundaries at Work session with Ginny Park, who is a lead data scientist at Embarrass. And then we're going to have inbox management, other events coming. So definitely check out that link tree. And if you need to, follow me on LinkedIn. I have a lot of information on there as well. Paige, you were amazing. Thank you so much for your insights and help with all of this. So appreciate you joining and everyone spending time here today.
Yeah, thank you, Zam. Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.